In this episode, I sit down with my friend Mike Connor. He's a Nelson Nash Institute practitioner. He's a retired full-bird colonel from the Air Force. He's a BWL major. He's a real estate investor. He's a real estate mentor, and he's a financial mentor to the servicemen and women and their families that he engages with. And he's a mentor in the church when it comes to finances. So we had fun. I enjoyed it. I believe you will as well. Thank you for listening. All right, welcome to the Banking with Life podcast. I'm your host, James Neathery, and I'm always excited to have a guest, especially in the studio. And I'm excited today to have my friend Mike Connor with me. Here, I'm not going to do his background justice, but I'm going to make an effort, and then we'll get him to fill in some details, okay? Mike Connor is a retired full-bird colonel from the U.S. Air Force.
Yes, sir.
BWL major, real estate investor. He's been a financial mentor to the young corpsmen. What do you call the military? The young military families? Airmen. Mm-hmm. And in his church as well. So he's got some financial background, and he really does help his airmen and their families and their church members, and not only in their personal finance, but even in real estate. You do some real estate mentoring. And so we'll get into how we met and everything, and I'm excited. I think this is going to be a great podcast. So, Mike, thanks for driving up here and joining us, sir. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you.
Perfect. You want to fill in some of the background on your experience, sir? I mean, full bird colonel. That didn't happen overnight.
It took about 24 years. I found if I kept showing up, they just keep promoting me, and you just keep coming, and they don't know what to do with you, and then next thing you know, you get promoted.
Pay more and promote you. That sounds like a perfect, typical government plan. Sorry.
Something about persistence and patience, something like that.
And following orders?
I follow orders fairly well. I'm a Navy brat, so I grew up in the military. Mm. I didn't know I was going to go in the military. My first degree is in secondary math education. I was supposed to be a high school math teacher, wrestling coach, gymnastics coach. And when I was student teaching, I looked so close in age to the high school students that they had a ball with Mr. Connor. They had me turn a chair around and put my foot up on it so I could discipline one of their classmates, and I'd let them walk me through it, and we all had a great time. Mm. But and I did well, and I liked it, but I wanted to get some real world stories to be able to use to illustrate math and how it works in the real world. So I was going to try the military for 4 years.
Wait, help me make that connection. I want to get some math experience, real world. I'm going to go to the military. How'd that happen?
Well,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, no, I think I could get plenty of examples on how I could make that work, on how math was applied in different professions. I was in a civil engineering squadron at the time. I was a staff sergeant and a carpenter, and had been a plumber and an admin specialist. You had to find a vacant position to be able to move up in the Air National Guard at that point in Delaware. And so I knew there were plenty of applications for math because I was doing it inside of the engineering world. And so it's not quite as backwards as you might think at this point.
I didn't use the word backwards. Let me make that connection.
But naturally, optimum size that I am, I wasn't going to be the fighting force myself. So I only talked to the Air Force and to the Navy. And the Air Force said, we want electrical engineers. Mm. And if you sign up with us, we're going to send you to officer training school in San Antonio for 3 months, and then we're going to send you to a civilian university to get a second bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. And I said, huh? You're going to pay me as a second lieutenant, then you're going to pay for school on top of that. And I just put myself through school, working full time while I was going to school. And I thought, man, that sounds like a pretty good opportunity. So the Air Force won, the Navy couldn't match the deal. And so in 1983, I hit Lackland Air Force Base for the second time. got commissioned as second lieutenant, and they sent me to Auburn University for 20 months to get a second degree in electrical engineering. And then that 4 years actually turned into a 20-year active duty career. So I never made it back to teach in the classroom, but I had fun doing it.
Mm-hmm. And you obviously you're pretty good at math then, right? All that double E engineering.
I gave the impression that I knew how to use math.
Okay, so then you got up to the rank of colonel, full bird colonel. Man, you had to put up with an awful lot to make that happen, I would think. I mean, I'm not a military guy.
It was a lot of adventure, it was a lot of highs, some lows, and that's where the persistence pays off and getting the mission done. So
I got it.
Yeah.
Well, let's kind of jump forward, and you can continue to fill that in. But we met about a year ago. Is that about right? Mm-hmm. Maybe a little over a year. And as I recall, I got a phone call from an individual you were either preparing to go into the Nelson Nash Institute, become a practitioner, or you were in the program. Which was it?
I was in the program.
Okay.
I knew I needed a mentor by that point, and I knew that my first quasi-IBC policy was not large enough. That after taking the practitioner course and understanding better what I had started with somebody else that was not an authorized practitioner, I knew I was ready for another policy. And I needed a mentor. And by that time, I was watching a lot of podcasts, but yours was one of the primary ones. And you let it slip that you were 001 authorized practitioner. So I said, what the hell? If I'm going to do this thing, I might as well go to the number one guy. And I called your sister, Julie, and I said, Julie, I'm a little bit of a smart ass. One way or the other, I'm going to learn something about what James knows because I'm ready for my next policy. Now, I want him to be my mentor as well, but I do need a policy, so I want to get started with that. But my real goal is for James to be my mentor on top of that as I complete the authorized practitioner.
And she said, smart, You'll fit right in. Huh?
She did. She said, hey, I think you're in already or something close.
So I remember, and you do take the initiative. There's no question about that. And you had a policy. So you were from maybe the real estate. How did you get exposed to the infinite banking concept? And how did you even get to your first policy? Because and we can edit this out if you wish, but I think it's important. And his bio is on the Nelson Nash Institute Practitioner Finder out of San Antonio, Texas. And I think that he's being generous. He's really not putting all of his experience up there. But you, in your financial mentoring with your airmen and their families and church members, you were, I don't even remember, I don't even know the title of it, but you taught Dave Ramsey's program in the church. Mm-hmm. Right. So I don't want to jump over that. And I'm not going to beat Dave Ramsey up. I mean, getting out of debt. Nobody should be in debt, right? We should not be in debt. Okay. So, and then you're a math educator, right? And you're teaching, real mentorship to these young people and the church members. And so, I mean, how did you go from there, to buying a big old life insurance policy? Hell.
It was an interesting journey. I can tell you that. And I'm going to go back as a Navy brat. Our only vacations were when the Navy was transferring my father to his next duty location. And we would always go through Wilmington, Delaware, where my extended family was from. And my grandfather was a master plumber. And from the time I was 12, I'd go back on the summers and live with him and work with him. Mm-hmm. And at 12, there was a high school teacher who was buying properties. At the time, he was buying one property, fixer-upper. He was doing the sweat equity thing. He used my grandfather for the licensed plumbing work. Yep. And then he'd flip the house, or that's what I later learned at 12. I didn't have a clue what he was doing.
He was making money.
But as I was graduating with my math degree, at I guess I just turned 22, this person was no longer a teacher. This was a millionaire real estate investor who was buying rows of townhouses in Wilmington, Delaware, and renovating them. And I didn't have a clue what he was doing, but I knew I was going to do something with real estate in the future. And then my father did not have a good experience with buying houses. As a naval officer, he avoided it. And most military members avoid home ownership because they're afraid they're going to get stuck if the market changes and they're going to have to rent and the renters are going to screw them and all that kind of stuff. And so I started putting puzzle pieces together. And when I retired from the Air Force and took my first civilian job in Sumter, South Carolina, home to Shaw Air Force Base and Air Force Central Command headquarters, and now Army Central Command headquarters. I started real estate investing there, and the military at that time was one of the larger industries in the area, and not a lot of people wanted to buy houses in that area because they didn't figure they'd be there that long. The town was about 50,000, and the perception was a great assignment, but I'm moving on and I don't want a property there. Now, I moved there in 2003, and I'd started taking real estate investing training, and I was learning how to buy properties, but you need buyers to buy your properties. And because it was a lower economic area and not a lot of financial education, I started learning about financial education, and Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University was one of those programs that were being promoted in the church.
Sure.
And the basics of it are great. And the analogy to math is, addition and subtraction kind of thing. You got to get the basics before you can do anything more sophisticated with finances. So that was the right place to start for many people, not only for the people that were in our properties, but my church congregation. And then I've got a not-for-profit in South Carolina called the Patriot Project, where we advocate financial intelligence, home ownership, and entrepreneurship. So I'd go speak on the Air Force Base, and we'd have military members come as well. And it was a great education, bring everybody back to the basics, get them to put a budget in place. So they were telling their money where to go rather than running out of the month and not enough money.
Yep.
So a lot of good concepts. And again, the basics that everybody can learn to begin with, but not the end of financial intelligence or education for me. And then from that, mentoring military members, who most of us, as a trained high school teacher, we don't teach financial education in the schools. And then you take a young airman or a young officer who's not been taught as well, but now they have a steady paycheck. And they're out just buying all kinds of stuff that they don't need. Parkinson's rule, and so I would brief the younger, both enlisted and officer groups and say, now, wait a minute, if you put a plan together now, when you separate or you retire, and stay in as long, we need you, we appreciate your service, stay as long as it's right for you and your family. But I want you to have a plan other than I have to take the first job when I separate, because I wasn't wise with my money to begin with. And so that provided a lot of good mentoring opportunities and a lot of ability to help people make a big impact in their life. And that fit the teacher in me or the coach in me and that kind of thing.
And then, carry on. I'm like, how you're like,
well, so that's
because the construct of there has to be an enemy. Dave Ramsey's enemy is whole life insurance, right? The infinite banking concept the bad guy is central banking. Well, one has an awful lot of truth, and the other is contrived or constructed, in my opinion. Right? But there's that paradigm that, here's the goal, it's a worthy goal, it's a noble idea, and there's a bad guy. So going through and teaching that course, you had to have your opinion of life insurance had to be shaped somewhat. A whole life is the worst place to put money.
And that is interesting. But first, even just insurance to begin with, if it hadn't been for the Air Force and them saying you get to pick between $200,000 or $400,000 worth of service members group life insurance, nobody taught me about insurance.
That 400 is bigger than 200, so let's do that.
That's right. And it was cheap. So I was active duty Air Force until I was 44. And at that time, I had a wife, 4 kids, and 2 dogs. And then I'm losing that insurance. And then there's a choice for veterans group life insurance. And as I was telling you the other day, I just talked to a recently retired Air Force member who had to make the decision on what they were going to do. And when I looked at the numbers on veterans group life insurance and the amount of money that has to be paid in order to keep it in force,
it goes up every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it was into some numbers large enough that most people won't stick with it.
No question.
So as I was retiring, I had that choice in 2003. And my father was a USA member, so I was born into it.
Automobile Association.
And a USA member in my own right at this point. And so I called them and didn't get a lot of education, but I learned that a 20-year term life insurance policy at $500,000 was a whole lot cheaper than what the VGLI was going to provide.
At 400.
At 400.
And in that conversation, and you got 500,000 in term, right?
Right.
And I asked him, well, Mike, how'd you get to that 500?
I pulled it out of some part of my anatomy.
Which is a great question. I said it on purpose because when you talk to people, it's, I've got $1 million in term, I've got 500 in term, 750 in term, 250 in term, whatever it is. 99% of them, all you got to do is ask them, well, what kind of formula? How did you get to that number? What kind of formula, mathematical equation, or whatever did you use? No, didn't. None. It just, I didn't have any or had some. That's more than I had. And so it sounded like a real number, right? And you think about that, and that's the truth. God help us if that's how you're going to make a decision on life insurance, right? But then to carry that out, and I know I'm skipping forward a little bit because we had a great conversation. He came up yesterday, so in that conversation, and we'll get to this. I'm like, well, and I know how much death benefit you have, or I have an idea of how much in-force death benefit you have, and I'm not going to ask for you to disclose that or anything, but you had 500 in term. And compared to what you have, which one do you think will be around at natural mortality?
Well, I think my whole life policy will.
Right. So, there's no question if we don't have, any capital, term is better than nothing. But the appropriate amount of term is better than having just some random number, right? And then above that, being properly insured with permanent life insurance is nirvana. Anyway, okay. Thanks for letting me interrupt there. So don't lose your train of thought. Okay.
So for me personally, then in 2003, I put that policy in place, and it's good until I'm 65. I'm 62.
Wow, you don't look a day over 55.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir. So about 2 years ago, my lovely wife says, "Hey, that life insurance policy is getting ready to end when you're 65. What are we going to do about that?" And I said, I hadn't considered my mortality. Holy cow, I'm shooting for 120.
Right.
So
he works out every day. Eats right too.
That's right. I try to. But from her perspective, and with women having larger security glands than a guy does, her security gland was squeezing pretty hard. And so
Sometimes they're just smarter than us. Come on, let's be honest.
Possibly.
Most of the time.
Possibly. So I think it was our CPA at the time, had a free steak dinner seminar.
Selling life insurance?
Selling life insurance. Now, he brought in this group, and I'd never heard of this concept, but this was high cash value life insurance that they already had somebody lined up to lend you the premium money to get into it, and some complicated
some premium
scheme.
Finance. I love it.
Yeah, some complicated scheme.
I bet the CPA is licensed too, right? Okay.
So I'm
sure he's a great guy. You wouldn't do business with him.
We did not take that opportunity. I didn't understand it, frankly, and I wasn't looking for more debt at that point. But the concept was there about what whole life could do and the cash values and how to use it to bank on. Mm-hmm. And it was about a year later, and Lisa's security gland was squeezing a little bit harder because we hadn't done anything to replace the term life insurance policy.
And you're sitting there aging.
Yeah, I'm getting older, and I thought prettier, but
50-50, you know.
Oh man. So we then went to, and it was a quasi real estate investing seminar, and it was actually on residential assisted living facilities. And because I'm part of the baby boomers and that population's growing, they're saying, hey, here's a great opportunity to combine real estate. And Lisa is a former registered nurse. Mm-hmm. So we're thinking, okay, well, maybe there's some way we put the two pieces together.
Higher ROI.
And we learned, and fortunately, this was in 2019, I think, we learned that wasn't the right opportunity at that time. Mm-hmm. And given all of the COVID stuff that happened afterwards, we're glad that
looked like a genius for passing on that one. Huh?
the counter procrastination gene on that one saved me. But in order to help fund that and to wealth build as part of that, this seminar included a life insurance agent who was promoting, he called it investment grade life insurance.
Red flag. Anytime I'm going to interject here. Investment grade life insurance gets its origin from the late 80s when the insurance companies came out with the unbundled product Universal Life. Right. So the sales terminology back in that day was, well, we're going to present this as a retirement plan. Wrong. And then we're going to use the terminology investment grade. Wrong. Which implies whatever you have is substandard, right? Or investment grade is far superior to what you have. It's a sales terminology. So when you hear investment grade life insurance, should raise a red flag. So thanks for letting me interject.
Uh-oh. Well, we didn't know about red flags at the time. Had not started the practitioner program.
Right.
But it was whole life insurance with one of the top 5.
So they just say the big 4 is that 5th one that they always leave out. Right.
I've been watching your podcast.
Right.
That's how I can say top 5. And so
it's one of the second oldest life insurance company that continually exists in the United States. So. Okay.
So we ended up putting 2 policies in place, one on myself and one on Lisa. And
did they mention Nelson's name ever? Any of them?
No.
Of course not. Okay.
No. And that's part of the reason or how I came to find you, because I continued my education.
Yeah. Once you start writing those big checks, now you're really vested, right? Or invested,
That's right?
So your education continues on purpose, because we all pay substantial premiums no matter what they are, in my opinion. I don't care if an individual is paying $500 or a guy's paying $1 million a year. Sometimes a guy paying $500 a month is a greater challenge than the guy paying $1 million. Because the guy, it's like the story of the widow's mite. The guy paying $500 is really stretching himself. The guy paying $1 million should probably be paying $3 million. So,
yep. Gotcha.
But once you start writing the checks, and now it's like, okay, now I really want to know, right? I want to know more or as much as I can.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and fortunately, I'm a lifetime learner. The military helps make you a lifetime learner, I think. But I continued my studying and came across your podcast. And my wife, Lisa, is a Canadian out of Edmonton.
Oh,
and
well, she's there now.
She's in Edmonton getting snowed on right now.
That's crazy.
And
then too, let me say that they've been a guest. I'm assuming that you also listen to Wealth Without Bay Street.
Right.
So Jason Lowe, Richard Canfield. I mean, we're right after when we finish. I mean, I'm gonna podcast with them as well. So we don't want to leave them out.
So I started seeing these podcasts and then linking to the Nelson Nash Institute. So then I followed the link and found the practitioner program and figured, all right, well, this is the place to learn. And I think in the process, I had gone to the agent who signed me up, who had been a former real estate investor as well. And I said, hey, tell me a little bit about what you did. Mm-hmm. And he told me about his journey to become a life insurance agent. And I said, okay, well, I think I may want to do that. How do I do that? And so he told me about the life insurance training and education and taking a license. So I'd already gone through that process. And at the same time that I was signing up for the practitioners program. And so as I'm going through the practitioners program, and then I'm going back and talking to who I'm now signed up under, I'm going, no, wait a minute. Do we do this? And he didn't know the language I was speaking.
You're right.
And so he couldn't help me the way I wanted to be helped.
Right.
And so that's what led me to calling Julie and saying, okay, I know from the study of the practitioner program, I now know better what I'm doing, and I know I started too small. And I'm ready right now to put the next one in place. And
well, that's perfect. When you say you started too small with that gentleman, it was substantial. And there's even other policies that, so he's practicing, you're practicing an even distribution of age classes as well, already before we ever met. And, and part of that is, I talk to agents all the time, and they have a special place in my heart. And I especially talk to practitioners or people that are interested in potentially becoming a practitioner. So, I mean, I spend a lot of time that I don't have, and I do that on purpose, but because I think it's the right thing to do. But, I mean, you were already paying substantial premiums. Right. Yes. And so whenever I work with someone, it's a pretty high threshold. You've got to be teachable, you've got to be willing, and you got to be, somewhat being able to take the initiative and being oriented in that fashion that, you've got to be the driver, right? As
Sure.
far as what you want to do and what you want to learn. And so when you're saying you're ready to expand, you already were paying substantial premiums is what I'm saying when we met. And I know that you shared those illustrations with me. We did not replace any of them. And I don't remember how old they were, but I'm like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? And the best that I recall is like, well, because that's what he said. And they're not harmful, right? But you have since done better. Right. And if he would have known better, I think, you could have done better. And I'm just saying that to say this, that you're already paying substantial premiums. You're already, to become a mentee and a practitioner, you were already paying substantial premium. And then you paid, you even expanded your system, you became a client. And so when you were saying you're ready to expand, it's a continuation of his expansion is my point here.
Well,
okay.
And for most of us, we have no background or training, not only in finances, but let alone insurance.
Right.
And the concept of determining what your human value of life is or what the right number is, I don't recall going through that process with the first agent
Sure.
That I dealt with.
They don't deal with that in the real estate world, human life value.
That could be, but he was a life insurance agent at that point too.
They don't have training generally in the life insurance world either. And I'm not beating the guy up because, I mean, he's obviously a good guy. You wouldn't have done business with him, right? And his heart's in the right place. I'm speaking of the financial services industry and the life insurance industry as a whole. Okay. So.
Well, and the tough part is if the client or the customer doesn't have a concept of what's appropriate, and if they got a threshold that says, "Whoa, this is a lot of money, I'm not comfortable going past this," or they just give that number out there and say, "I can't do any more than that." Well, a lot of times that, if the life insurance agent doesn't challenge that, if they just go with it, then the consumer's never going to know.
Right.
Hey, there are other ways to do that. And that's one of the things I liked about the practitioner program and watching your videos and the Canucks. I learned different ways to explain the program and the process. But then what I do in the real estate world as well gives me the ability to talk to just about anybody on any subject. And I was a former housing counselor, so I talk to people that are in bad financial situations through awesome financial situations. And the math teacher or whatever helps challenge what they think in a way that I like seeing their head hurt and then help them come up with their own solution.
Well, going from, and I appreciate that. I think that, that's apparent once you get to know kind of your operation. But how did you go from, the beans and rice program, and I hear that your CPA brought in some premium finance kind of presentation, and then the real estate, they bring in another concept of high cash value, but that's still balanced with the background of teaching Dave Ramsey's program. Was there a conflict or a mental struggle or any of that? But was it, you could rightly just clearly divide the math, because math is math, from, actual maybe behavioral finance or, what's going on at the you and me level? How did you reconcile that and get to the point where, how did you tell your lovely wife, it's like, listen, we've been teaching this beans and rice thing, and now I want to pay this number in premium. She surely had to question your intelligence. Maybe not. I don't know.
I hadn't pondered that. Now, the Financial Peace University program.
That's what okay.
For the basics of budgeting, and remember, I don't believe financial intelligence or education is taught.
Right.
In high school or anywhere for it to be helpful. So to get those basics out, to help people get structured, for sure made sense.
Sure.
To me.
Absolutely.
To get out of consumer debt made sense. And I was already living that when I was teaching it. Mm-hmm. But I was an investor. And investing, and
so that was where the separation. You're not looking at the market; you're looking at real estate for the rate of return, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and leverage in real estate, and Nelson points that out in becoming your own banker. So I knew I was violating that at the time.
Yeah, well, Dave Ramsey lost a bunch of money in real estate, right? Filed bankruptcy, and maybe he's made it right, maybe he hadn't. I don't know, but I'm just saying that, and I don't. It's almost like I'm not missing an opportunity to beat him up, but I'm not missing an opportunity to point out what's really going on is my effort here, right? So that was easy for you since like you're out of debt. There's some structure there. No question we should be out of debt. But you didn't, buy into the 12% long-term growth stock mutual fund. You thought real estate would be better for you? Well, first I had that site picture from starting at 12 to 22. Yeah, right.
Seeing it in action. Second, I was buying, and this is right when I now know when the mutual fund market was really starting to grow in the early 80s. So I'm prime time getting all of those commercials and, hey, you should dollar cost average into mutual funds. And there are a lot of companies that market to junior officers in the military.
Sure.
More steak dinners.
Oh my gosh, just like shooting fish in a barrel. Then
So they had one come in, but they were charging fees. And I told you I was a USA member. I knew they had no load fees. So I said, okay, well, I can do it smarter than that. So I went to USAA and I started buying mutual funds. I was dollar cost averaging $1,500 a month going into mutual funds. And so as I watch you and Ryan talks about capitalizing, I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time, but putting that money in was the start of me capitalizing my financial system that I still enjoy 40 years later at this point. But the damn frustrating part was every time there was some world crises and the military's focused on that mission, by the time I turned around and looked, my portfolio had lost 20, 30, 40%. And that happens 3, 4, 5 times over a career. And you go, what the heck just happened here? Where did everything go?
I wasn't investing in the military industrial complex. Dang it.
So watching that happen, but then studying real estate investing just prior to retiring, I figured I could do better in real estate, and that was a smarter place to diversify my money.
I got it.
And that I may lose on a house, but I'm not going to lose 20, 30, 40% of everything that I built. So that started about a 20-year process of
So you didn't get addicted to that 12% long-term growth stock mutual fund and, comparing that investment to the investment in life insurance and how that was all negative. That didn't really get on you.
No, that part wasn't there. Now, the life insurance piece at the time was there because that's when I was putting that 20-year term policy in place. So
you were doing that part.
So thinking through that piece, and I had heard been sold, as I'm thinking back, a universal life policy back then. Mm-hmm. So looking at the Financial Peace University and hearing, hey, wait a minute, this whole life's not smart. And that was sold as a form of whole life, although I now know it's not, or
words have meaning.
It's a tough whole life policy if you can maintain it that long.
It's a permanent policy. It's not whole life, but yeah.
So that did help me make the decision to get out of that to get into the 20-year term policy. So that part worked well. But then slowly I transitioned out of the stock market or mutual funds completely because I'm tired of some crisis happening and then the U.S. or world herd runs off a cliff and then you lose 20, 30, 40% just because they felt whatever they felt didn't make sense anymore.
It'll come back. It's a paper loss. All right. It's an unrealized loss. You lock in the loss when you sell. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't feel good whether it's paper or not paper.
That was during the, quite often people would get their statements and they throw them in the drawer they didn't want to see, which was the same as they had done previous. When the market's all going up, it's going up. It's only going one way. You don't even care. Just throw it in the drawer. It's going to go up. And then when it goes down, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't bear to watch it. So just throw the statement in the drawer. Right.
Well, my NNI bio talks about all the red pill moments I've had since I started studying wealth building. And as I retired in the Austrian economic school and fee and everything I've read in the last couple of years, and I'm scratching my head going, doggone it. The mutual funds that they were selling back in the early 80s, well, that's when everybody was jumping in. And they kept selling that notion, that's a smart place to put your money. So everybody kept putting their money. Sure. So a lot of the price rise was due to demand, people just jumping in, not because the market was getting any better.
Now, did you figure that out because you're a military colonel or real estate investor?
I'm a little bit slower than the average bear. So it didn't occur to me at the time, but then watching the government-caused housing crisis in the first part of the century, and then the one that we're going through right now. And you see the increase in prices of real estate. And as an engineer, I know that pile of dirt and sticks didn't become 10, 20% more valuable year over year just because it's sitting there, that there had to have been a lot of cheap money that was being thrown out there and a lot of marketing and advertising to spur people to buy. So it's the same concept that initially drove up the mutual fund market.
You mean interest rates are so low, money is so cheap that it's got to go somewhere? And are you implying that it's going into the stock market and the real estate market?
I believe I am.
Yeah, and here we are in Texas, and all these people are moving from California, Washington, Illinois, New York. They're moving to Florida, but they're moving to Texas too. And it's like, man, so avoiding, they're fleeing government action, right? And so the government just should maybe mind their own dang business, right? I'm just saying more government action causing prices to rise on top of the cheap money and the great money supply. It's someday we'll figure out what's going on, as an individual, and then maybe take action. So anyway.
Well, for me being a mentor to military members now, and I tell everybody, it doesn't matter what service, I'll make fun of them if it's not the...
Y'all all make fun of each other. Come on, man.
But they're still part of my military family.
Absolutely.
And so I get connected to a lot of folks, a lot of military moving into San Antonio. And earlier this year, I was taking a lot of calls and military members trying to use their VA loan to buy in a market where you had to sign a waiver to say that you were going to pay in cash above the appraised value for a property. Just the fact that the real estate commissions undid the protections that had always existed but were strengthened since the last housing crisis, and they literally undid that for this current market. And so these military members could not compete putting in an offer.
Right.
And
those Californians, they were signing that waiver, right?
Lots of people. Holy cow, 10, 20. You couldn't get an offer even put on the table unless you had that waiver signed.
Right.
And then there were multiple offers on most properties.
Right.
So my advice to military members at the time was, hey, my recommendation, you may pay a little higher rent right now, but rent, because I think you're going to see the market, the prices come down in 2022 after the government involvement is pulled back. And I don't think it can keep going too much terribly longer. I didn't think it could go this long, but at that point... I'm
amazed at how long they can kick the can down the road. I'm not making any predictions or prognostications other than, the longer we allow them to go as they're going, you're going to be separated from your private property and your rights are going to continue to be shredded. Wow. So that was just my interjection there. Comment.
No, it's right on target. I don't know how we can do that.
I mean, because if those guys would have bought 2 years ago and they're selling now, they'd be geniuses, right? Because the market keeps going up. So, I mean, I don't know, but whatever happens, you better be able to control the leverage that you've gotten yourself into, is my opinion. So.
Right. Yeah. And given the fact right now that they couldn't buy in a rising market, right, that we don't know how long it's going to rise before it comes. But in a normal 3 to 4 year assignment, I'm thinking they're going to be on the tail end of something that's not pleasant.
They may be in some other state or some other country in 3 or 4 years, right?
Well, when they get another assignment, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
And that's the fear of home ownership in the military, that when it's time to leave, if the market did tank, well, now you can't sell your house for what it's worth. And most military members are not good savers, just like the rest of the country. Right. So they don't have money in the bank to write a check to sell their house when it's time to sell. Right. In fact, that's how I became a housing counselor. During the 2008 timeframe, we had military members, never missed a payment, but they got orders out of this Air Force base in South Carolina, and the lenders were telling them that they were going to file for a deficiency judgment on the amount that was short. And as a housing counselor, I was teaming up with their real estate agent in talking to the lender saying, hey, there's no way. And this is before the Department of Defense got involved and some rules got put out there to these lenders saying, what, are you kidding me? You're going to take a military member, never been late, only reason leaving is because they have orders, and you're going to penalize them right now in this down market.
They're like, hell yeah, we are. We want to resell that property. The values are going up.
Well, and it was a short sale, so they had a buyer.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But the buyer wasn't bringing all the cash to the table, and the seller couldn't bring the cash to the table. So the lender agreed on the short sale.
Yeah.
But they wanted to put a legal judgment in the system to come after them. And
of course.
Unfortunately, we were able to get everybody.
Nelson used to say that, and you check the lineage of the bankers, you'll find they have some canine ancestry. So,
well, and like Nelson's story, and I like Nelson's story because when he graduated from college, you know what he became first? What his first job was? Mm-hmm. What was that?
He was in the forestry business.
No, he was an Air Force officer.
Oh, is that a job?
Oh, man. Hey, don't hold it against him, but everybody just give me a call.
Okay. Fair. Good. Great point. I mean, yeah. Military never, listen, we have lots of military clients across the country. And, I'm being hard on the government in general. I got nothing but love for the military men and women, service people that have sacrificed their life. I just don't agree with the people that are sending them wherever they're sending them. So, okay, he was a Army Air Force pilot.
He went to the Army after his Air Force tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Air Force school is a job. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he was a navigator. If I read it correctly, I think a navigator in the Air Force for 2 years.
Okay.
So when he tells his stories about going to the commissary, he was an Air Force officer at that time.
Right.
And then he went into the Army National Guard, if I read the story correctly.
Okay.
But like Nelson, as a real estate investor, I leveraged money. While I was teaching Financial Peace University in the small town in South Carolina, when the big banks in our government screwed up the housing market, I couldn't meet my obligations. And like Nelson, if I put my name on a piece of paper, that I'm going to satisfy my debts.
Right. So you didn't file bankruptcy?
Didn't file bankruptcy. Didn't do anything like that. Didn't have any properties foreclosed, but I ended up moving my family to San Antonio, and I had to go back to work as Mr. Mike Connor for the Air Force as a contractor, managing big military construction projects in Afghanistan. I ultimately ended up in Afghanistan for 2 years.
Some of that tax-free money, is that what I'm hearing?
Holy cow. It's amazing the amount of taxes they took out of that pay.
No question.
With me only coming in the country 30 days or less.
Yeah.
How they took that much, I don't understand, but they got it.
They have a spending problem, Mr. Connor, and then they don't have any money other than what they rent from the central banks that printed out of thin air. So they don't have any money. So they need yours. They don't have any productivity. So they've got to tax yours. So I'm going to say it, but you don't have to. Okay. It's like,
well, yeah, it's incredible. But so the Nelson story, a lot of it rings true with what I've been through, and I've always been smart enough to sit in a room and listen to those that I think know something I don't know. And so as I studied the program and understood what was possible, and that for my portion of the family tree, I can change that as long as I can train my kids.
Yeah.
And that's still a question. But as long as I can train them to keep pursuing what I've started, then I think that this branch of the Connor family changes forever. And that's the goal.
Yeah. I think that you've done the correct foundation, my opinion, and expanded correctly. No question. So good job on that. So it wasn't a challenge then what I'm getting to or asking earlier. I'm going to wrap that up and then I'll move on. But there wasn't a big challenge really from going from, becoming debt free to life insurance as a bad guy. That really wasn't a barrier in your mind, which is rare in my opinion from the that school of thought, right, of Dave Ramsey's, right? So it just wasn't a challenge. And like I said, that's rare. So, how though you're paying the large premiums, you're using it in real estate. I mean, how is that going? Everything in real estate hadn't been rosy over your whole career, surely.
Not everything rosy, but the lifetime learner piece, I became a licensed appraiser in South Carolina. I wanted to know how my team wanted to know how are the banks going to value the properties because we were ultimately going to sell them. So I got trained as an appraiser. I even took the home inspection courses. I didn't license that. I ultimately became a real estate agent and licensed. So I wanted to know what everybody in the circle, what they were thinking, learn their language, see if they knew anything that was important to the process. So we were taking control of everything that we could take control of.
You suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out?
Possibly. I call it a lifetime learner, but I'm risk adverse. So I was insuring the program, and so it carried on with the life insurance policies. And the concept of leveraging money, that never, as long as we were wise getting into a property, that never bothered us. And as we were talking on the math spectrum, Dave's program is the addition and subtraction. The leveraging may be more towards towards calculus, and because I do it all, I can do it all and not feel bad about it. So moving those large premiums into the whole life policies and then using those to clear debt that is on real estate, for us is exciting because when I ran the numbers or the comparison between the average American family that Nelson talks about and 34.5 cents of every take-home dollar going to pay some financing charge, when I just looked at one portion of our portfolio on subject to properties, about 10 grand a month going out, 63 cents of every dollar was interest. Yeah. I'm going, well, holy cow, if I can shift that debt into my financial system and keep making the same payment stream, what in the world could that do?
You can't do that quick enough, can you?
That's what I'm attempting to do.
and talking about generous and being generous, Nelson was very generous when he's using 34.5 cents. But he's also being very generous, like, the average All-American saving 10%. There's no way, not even halfway there. So, what I see, and I haven't calculated them lately, but, just most all Americans are somewhere around 50%. That it's not 34.5 cents on average. I see the average much higher than that. 50% of every dollar going through the all-American family's budget, right through their hands, in the form of finance costs for someone else. And you can even say, there's some lost opportunity costs in there. It's just not accruing to them. It's accruing to someone else. Forever, Forever, forever. That's a long time. So,
well, and that concept of instant gratification that they got us on whatever number of years ago, and you deserve this.
Oh yeah,
holy cow! And so that mentorship for young military members who finally and I went through it myself. Finally, have a steady paycheck that. I know it's coming.
Now you're spending like a drunken sailor, huh?
That's right. I got to do something.
As an airman.
Got to do something pretty bad for that check to stop.
Yeah.
And so Parkinson law kicks in and you go, I did without this, this, and this. And
I'm going to make up for it now.
And then outside of any military installation, there's a whole lot of operations that will separate you from your money.
Oh, yeah.
And so to help to help stop that. So that's when I was looking back and thinking about the capitalization. I had more money than I knew what to do, and so $1,500 a month going into
that's a lot of money.
Mutual funds.
That's what Nelson was paying in premium back there in 1980, $18,000 a year in premium, which is a lot of money. Times that by 3 or 5 now.
Well, and that's the crazy thing. If only I had known back then, and all of that money went through a whole life policy rather than to the stock market.
$18,000 a year. Did I say a month? Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, so that part made perfect sense. And then trying to build the system of policies with my kids, that was the other aha moment that hit me in the middle of studying all of it. Right. So as I'm training for the San Antonio Rock and Roll Marathon, and I got the podcast playing in my ears while I'm out logging a lot of miles, and I'm going, doggone it, I wish I'd done that. And then I went, wait a minute, I got 4 20-something-year-old kids, and I'm a late bloomer. So I've got kids 23, 25, 26, and 27 right now. And at that time last year, 3 out of the 4 of them still liked me. And I said, hey, I would have done this when I was your age, but I didn't know about it. Now you know about it. I'm saying instead of you putting a policy on yourself, put the policy on me because I'm going first. So they thought about it, and I said, no, wait a minute, I'm planning to live to 120. Calm down. And I was only 60 at the time. So I said, no, I'm not going anytime soon, but you can have a lot of years to build up this banking policy. And then when I die, I already want you to celebrate because I've been working real hard to build the family finances and to screw the IRS as much as possible through 1031 tax exchanges, and hopefully that doesn't change here.
That's never going to change, right? That step up in basis, now unrealized gains, that's never going to change. Just because they're talking about it all the time, and they put it in a bill, carve it out of a bill, that's never going to happen. Yeah. See, sometimes ignorance is bliss, but it never really got. I mean, I've been around real estate groups and participated in a bunch of them, and I like real estate. That is a continuation of flawed thinking, in my opinion. 1031 exchange everything. That's like tax defer. Who are you piling up that tax burden on? Your children? Yes. Your grandchildren? Yes. It's like it never made sense to me. But then it fit, and I'm just saying, it fit right into a certain real estate investor mentality, which is cheap, never use your own capital, use the third-party lenders, and just cheap, beat them up on price to the nth degree, and then never pay taxes. I mean, it's like, really? This just doesn't seem like a long-term formula for success to me. I'm not saying that there's not a case or a place for a 1031 exchange, but when you're piling up property after property after property over 10, 15, 20, 30 years, I'm just like, there's going to be one heck of a tax bill coming due on your people. So it just never made sense to me that.
So if they kill the step up in basis, and who knows, but this is like the financial education that we didn't get early on. With us sitting, averaging about 60 at this point, we know a whole lot more now than we knew when we were in our 20s or our 30s. And just like the qualified retirement plans that are out there, they're sold to you like they're something good, and you're not thinking necessarily about the consequences.
Yeah, you don't hear both sides of the table, the argument from both sides of the table. It's all presented, loftily from one side. I get it. Yeah,
so you start down the road, and then as you're going down, you go, oh, wait a damn minute. And the various concept, and I have IRA accounts as well.
Sure.
And the concept that they ask you early on, they say, hey, right now you need this amount of money, you have this kind of income, you're going to be taxed at this rate. When you retire, you're not going to need that amount of money. Well, I'm not quite sure that was the right thought at the time, because I want to keep living a good life, so I don't want to live on less money. But what they sold you was, hey, you're not going to be making as much money. You're not going to be paying the same taxes.
You're going to be in a lower bracket. Right.
But they didn't count on what $5 trillion of extra money being printed and the tax rates going up to recoup that. So what we didn't know, but it's biting us now, I think.
Well, I mean, comparatively, if you pile up all the tax burden on a future generation and you have term insurance and you outlive the term, that's going to be ugly. But if you have permanent insurance face amount that's enforced when you graduate, you may not completely alleviate that tax burden, but you're going to put a dent in it, right? You're going to make, it's, at least you made an effort correcting that. You and you, the listener, can as well make an effort to correct that. I'm just saying that line of thinking to defer. I mean, I've been around financial people, for 30 years, and some I have a lot of respect for. I think most of them have their hearts in the right place, and, they want the best for their consumers and their customers and their clients. But you hear all kinds of things. You get a room full of advisors together, and it's like, oh my gosh, you almost have to detox after 15 or 20 minutes. And listen, I know all you life insurance agents out there listening. I love you. Thank you for listening. And I'm right. So anyway, you hear the conversation. It's like, I'm going to defer forever. Deferred annuities. Deferred 1031. Defer taxes forever. And it is just not a solution. Now, does that mean we all want to go sell everything in the highest tax bracket? Of course not. I'm just saying that is not the solution, right? There are things that can be done other than that can maybe better alleviate the tax burden. Mom's tax bracket may be lower than your children's. Your children's tax bracket may be higher than yours. Taxes, one of the greatest threats to all of our estates in our life, should be addressed, and they should be addressed, appropriately with an educated agent or advisor and an educated consumer. My opinion. Just deferring taxes forever is not the solution. It may be the easiest sounding, but it is not the best solution generally. So
we could wake up the U.S. population, and we could go vote somebody in to fix the doggone situation.
I think they're waking up. I don't know. I mean, they, them, us, it's stunning what's going on. I mean, we're sitting down. This is November 17th. Austria has instituted a home lockdown for the uninitiated. Canada is like, oh my gosh, Australia. It's like all this is happening in slow motion right before our eyes. I think we're still stunned as a people, like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? You need to clear your eyes and, gird your loins because it's happening. Anyway. We don't always
You're
have
just
to
a ray of sunshine, aren't you?
Listen, I'm an eternal optimist, so I believe in the all-American individual. I believe in you. You can do it. And I'm just saying that it's going on right now. It's happening right now. So I think historically, bad things happen to dictators, right? And it's, anyway, yeah, I am a ray of sunshine. I'm all peace, love, peace, and chicken grease. All right. I'm an eternal optimist, but I'm a realist, and things are going on. I mean, I show up every day to promote the idea that you can become your own banker, right? I'm just a life insurance agent selling life insurance, right? And I'm doing that because you can't have freedom, period, without financial freedom. Mm-hmm. You cannot. So I'm promoting financial freedom as I see it correctly. So, yes, I am a ray of sunshine. Thanks for pointing that out.
That's right. You are. And I agree that the financial freedom piece of it, and so the not-for-profit that we have in South Carolina called the Patriot Project, for us, a patriot is accountable and responsible for themselves and theirs.
Yep.
So, and everything, their family, everything that comes after that, not the government.
Right.
And in order to do that, you have to set the foundation, the financial foundation, to be able to take care of whatever comes, not think your parents are getting too old and you're going to send them to some old age home that the government's paying for, or somebody in the family needs help and, well, they're going to go to the welfare system. It's not the way this country was set up. It's shocking comparing what I see in this country and what a citizen thinks they deserve compared to other countries that I've been in that
well put.
Have so much less,
yeah.
But they're not walking around protesting, or they're not upset because they don't have the latest iPhone and a
No, hell no. They're coming in here trying to get a $450,000 check is what I hear. All right, so let's be positive, all right?
Yes, all right. Positive, back to positive.
Okay, so how's it going now, with your real estate and your infinite banking concept, banking, quote unquote, type policies? Surely are you fully engaged and active with real estate, or, and I don't want to know great details or anything, but just kind of bring us up to date. So, military, beans and rice, Dave Ramsey, your mentor to the young airmen and their families, and then mentor in the real estate, mentor in the church. I mean, you're a pretty good servant, is what I'm saying. And then you're doing it and leading by example from your family, just to expand maybe a little bit on, because even distribution of age classes, you continue to expand there. Are y'all engaged with real estate with these cash flows? And I mean, you mentioned earlier, you did the numbers, $10,000 a month going out, and 63% of it was interest. I mean, that had to be shocking. I'd have had a heart attack and fell off the table. So I'm just saying that surely you've said about correcting that, right? And
well, absolutely. And we, as I say, we use private lenders as well. So we team with private lenders that they're making 0.001% on their uninvested funds. So they can make a good rate of return lending to my team. And then the way we help in the local market is we help prevent foreclosure. So the housing counselor and me, I was just door knocking 2 days ago. And so for families in San Antonio that are in the geographic region where we're located, we'll go out and door knock, talk to them face to face, tell them that we help families that are having challenges with their lenders, that we're our housing counselors or former housing counselors, and oftentimes that can help get action for the homeowner with the lender who may not be speaking to them in appropriate ways. I'll put it that way.
Right.
And so we help families get loan modifications and stay in their properties, and we get some nice referrals. We have some families that they can't fix it themselves, but we can still help them avoid the foreclosure. So that part works well. We are using our IBC policies to buy our debt back so that we're keeping it inside of our financial system. I just had a call from a physical therapist as I was driving up here yesterday, where there's a military member at the hospital where she works that wants to buy, but he's having challenges. And he's a soldier, so there's part of my military family I expect to talk to when I drive out here later today to help advise them on what would be smart as far as housing in San Antonio right now. So that kind of stuff happens on a daily basis. Through the NNI website, my very first referral was an active duty tech sergeant at Lackland Air Force Base. And that was awesome because I want to get to the active duty individual. So Brandon's already put a policy in place for himself that protects him, and he's excited about insuring his wife, and she just completed college. So she's working to get employed now, but as soon as she's got a steady paycheck, she's talking about putting a policy in place on herself, and they've got a 12-year-old daughter. So that part's exciting. I'm talking to retirees about the transition to the Veterans Group Life Insurance or not.
That you went through.
Or the service, what's the Survivor Benefit Plan. That's another program. Yeah. And to help educate the military wherever they are on the front end or the back end on financial intelligence and home ownership, or as a retiring on the transitional life insurance, or how to provide for their family when they die. And so there's income that continues to come in for their family. Yeah. That all of that stuff fits right in the sandbox I've been playing in for a lot of years. So that part's awesome.
Right. I mean, beyond banking, banking is just one thing that you can do with dividend-paying whole life insurance policies issued by mutual companies. But you can really bank with anything. You can bank with cash, you can bank with cows, you can bank with farm equipment, you can bank with CDs, you can bank. Banking is a process, not a product, right? But while you're solving these financial needs, you can practice banking too. It's a beautiful tool, in my opinion. All right, but so let's I don't know how long we've been going. I forgot to turn the timer on. But any closing, so let's kind of like wrap it up. Do you have any closing points that you want to make, or comments?
Closing comments.
Now, on the way home, you're going to think, I should have said this.
That's right.
I should have said that.
So many things. The financial education that we don't get, and me thinking all the way back to, I was supposed to be that high school math teacher, and why that's not a core part of our education system, given that you're going to have to operate your finances in our economy for the rest of your life. I still don't understand that. So there's a big lack there, and certainly the noise as Nelson and you talk about that's out there. Every industry has their product, their promotion, and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And if you get trained in that, you believe it. And so, as I told you, appraiser, home inspector, real estate investor, housing counselor, life insurance, every one of those career fields has their own message on how they're benefiting the public. And when you stand back and look at all of it, you scratch your head and go, well, wait a minute. Whoops, what happened over here? Mm-hmm. What happened over there? And they truly believe what they were doing, but they only knew a thin slice of what they were doing. So for me, being a lifetime learner, I find that very interesting to continue studying and to get people wherever they are in that spectrum and go, hey, here's where you say you are right now. Here's a path to some place that you could get to if you choose to. The concept that you have an opportunity to do something is a head-hurting kind of thing for most people. But that, I like that challenge. I like helping people. I like hurting their head on top of everything else, because I hurt my head at the same time. So every time I'm trying to teach somebody something new, I reinforce or learn something new as I do it. So I think that's an awesome thing.
Well, I think that Nelson was much more gracious. He's much more of a gentleman. He was better educated, just a smarter guy in general than I. He did point out the noise. I spent too much of my time on the noise. Yeah, I think. Do you agree? I spent too much time.
I'm talking for myself. Thank you, but I'll second yours though too.
And then with some of the people, they only know a sliver, but they act like they know the whole, and they were sincere. They were just sincerely wrong, right? Yeah. And then, and I'm just making comments on your comments. It's like the education is missing, no question. Why? I don't know. I think they're too damn busy indoctrinating. But that's just me, my opinion. And I'm positive, okay? But
well, it's more profitable for the system for us not to be educated. If we know what's happening, we'll know what to do. There's some sort of catchy phrase like that. If we teach a young person today as fast as they're picking up technology and everything else, and they get it, they're can do
incredibly
awesome
smart.
stuff.
These young people are incredible. I know what's that? Not the baby boom generation, but the younger generation that everybody beats up
millennials.
On. The millennials. Everybody beats up the millennials. Let me tell you what, they're very intelligent. And then the Zoomers underneath them, they make fun of the millennials, and they're even smarter, in my opinion.
I've got my kids calling me a boomer. So
boomer.
Plus their sense of humor on top of everything.
Yeah, they're sometimes funny. Most of the time they're not as funny as they think they are, but it's just kind of, and two, you said you're a late bloomer. I got to say this too, because I am too. Our youngest just turned 14. My goodness, where's the time gone? But statistically, the older you are when you have children, the longer you'll live. Your life expectancy is longer. That's an actuarial truth. So, and I don't know, I think it's because it gives us more purpose, like you eating right and working out. I work out, but I don't eat right. We're trying not to die. I think that's part of it. I don't know. Well, listen, Mike, I've had a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming up here and spending your time here. And sitting down with me. I've enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy listening, and thank you for listening. Until next time.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.